out by saying, very importantly, that he had supported this investigation all along. He was all for protecting Robert Mueller as he went through the process and saw it to the very end. That said, he said when it comes to the FISA warrant, the Clinton campaign, the counterintelligence investigation, he said it's been swept under the rug except by a few Republicans. Those days are over. Trey Gowdy joins us now, a Fox News contributor and former chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Trey, you've been listening to this along with us. He went on to explain to those reporters that the rule of law applies to Democrats and Republicans equally here. He explained why it's time to take a look at what he called the other side of this story. What did you take away from what you just heard there from the senator?
Well, Lindsay's right. There are some House Republicans that have been looking for the past 12 months at the FISA process, the origination of the FBI investigation in July of 2016. We were ridiculed by our Democrat colleagues and, quite frankly, by most people in the media for daring to ask how Jim Comey could have possibly cleared Hillary Clinton before she was interviewed. Democrats didn't want any part of that. So I am glad that Senator Graham and his Judiciary Committee is going to look at it. He's exactly right. The lady wears a blindfold. She's not a Republican. She's not a Democrat. As an American, you should want a Department of Justice and an FBI that you can have confidence in. But, Sandra, if anyone listening to that press conference wants to know why so many of my fellow citizens have so little confidence in the media, after 2 years and finding no evidence of conspiracy or coordination, the first three questions were not about that. They weren't about the origin of the investigation. It was about obstruction of justice. Not one question. There was three questions about obstruction and one about whether or not Lindsay should hold a campaign event in Florida. Nothing about the past 25 years, 2 years, $25 million, 500 witness interviews, no media inquiries about that.
It reminds you of this picture that stood out to all of us, James Comey tweeting out a picture of him standing in the forest with the title, "So Many Questions," to which Lindsey Graham retweeted with the reply, "Could not agree more. See you soon." It leaves us wondering what is next as far as further investigations, where exactly he's going to go with that. What he did confirm at the podium just now, Trey, is that William Barr should testify, he said. As far as whether Robert Mueller will be put on the stand, he said he's going to leave it up to William Barr. What does happen next, Trey?
Yeah, I was with Lindsay all day yesterday and talked to him last night after the Comey tweet came out. Somebody needs to take Comey's Twitter account away from him. Someone who hates the president as much as he does, and the president is cleared on even a scintilla of evidence of collusion with the Russians. Keep in mind, Sandra, the Barr letter said despite multiple offers by the Russians, entreats into the Trump campaign. They still didn't do it, and Comey is not satisfied. Lindsay's going to bring Comey. I'm sure he's going to bring Barr. Where I disagree a little bit with Lindsay is on whether or not this report should be made public. The Department of Justice answers true-false questions. Should you be indicted? Should you not be indicted? They don't write reports about other misconduct that doesn't rise to the criminal level, and they don't do Oppo research on people that we don't like. That's part of how we got where we are now, is the FBI and the DOJ were given Oppo research by Fusion GPS. To then allow Adam Schiff and Swalwell
and he's got so many questions,
and Castro.
Yeah, so Trey Gowdy, I have to leave it there. I want to get to Brett Hume. Trey Gowdy, thank you for standing by through that with us.
There will be much to mull over in coming days about the Robert Mueller report and the Attorney General's 4-page letter about it, but it's clearly a political win and a legal win for the president and his team. The Mueller report by the numbers: 19 lawyers, 40 FBI agents, intelligence analysts, interviewed 500 witnesses, issued more than 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants. In the end, 34 individuals and 3 companies were indicted on 199 charges, more than 24 of them Russians in an internet farm. In total, the 675-day investigation cost more than $25 million. Let's bring in our panel. Kimberly Strassel, a member of the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal; Charles Lane, opinion writer for the Washington Post; and Victor David Hanson, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution and author of the new book, The Case for Trump. Victor, first to you. Wrap up this weekend and the news about the report and as you see it.
Well, I think we have to realize that if Hillary Clinton had just won the election and she had not hired a foreign national to collect dirt on her campaign opponent, we wouldn't be talking today. The entire collusion narrative grew out of the disappointment of trying to explain the inexplicable why she lost, and then the dossier transmogrified from insurance to help the landslide into a way to abort the Trump presidency. Second thing, I think they thought collusion was separate from all these process crimes and obstruction. And once the collusion narrative, as I think most people thought, didn't exist, once it failed, how can you really obstruct justice for a crime that didn't exist? If Donald Trump said something about the futility or the waste of the collusion narrative, it would be seen post facto as wise jurisprudence, trying to warn people, don't do something stupid. It's not obstruction to do that. Finally, everything that begins badly ends badly, Brett. I mean, the idea that Rod Rosenstein, who had signed the FISA court, one of the FISA court writs that was misleading, and had given the rationale to fire James Comey, and had been in this tragic comic circus with McCabe right before Mueller was appointed, some kind of palace coup, was going to be disinterested in a way that Jeff Sessions was not, as the overseer was crazy. And then finally, when this team was appointed, the left and the Never Trump right said they went giddy. It was the All-Stars, the Dream Team, the Untouchables, the Hunter Killer Team. The reason they did that is that Robert Mueller didn't exercise just basic caution. He could have just said, whatever the law or the protocol is, I want an equal mixture of conservative and liberal lawyers. I want to make sure that nobody on this team has given either to the Trump campaign or to the Clinton campaign. I want to make sure that none of you on government devices, if you were working for the government, has said anything pro-Trump or anti-Trump. And then finally, he could have said, I don't want anybody on my team that's donated to either campaign. Had he done that at the very beginning, it would have been different. Now he's got a reputation of a Captain Ahab or maybe Inspector Javert right out of Les Miserables.
Chuck, I referenced it with Britt earlier, but the CIA director, former CIA director, John Brennan, had some interesting things just days ago to say about all of this, and then talked today on MSNBC. Take a listen.
Friday is the day that the grand jury indictments come down. I don't think Robert Mueller will want to have that dramatic flair of the Ides of March when he is going to be delivering what I think are going to be his indictments, the final indictments.
I don't know if I received bad information, but I think I suspected that there was more than there actually was. And I am relieved that it's been determined that there was not a criminal conspiracy with the Russian government over our election. I think that is good news for the country.
Chuck, I said earlier the legal threat is not done for the president with the Southern District of New York and the investigations on Capitol Hill. There'll be a lot of battle over what obstruction means on Capitol Hill, but your thoughts?
Well, I don't know what the CIA director was talking about the first time, and I don't really know what he's talking about the second time. He didn't really know what he was talking about, and that's too bad. I think that was probably a mistake on his part, given the prestige of the former office that he carried. But I do agree with him that it is, to the extent we have now shown there was no criminal conspiracy, that ought to be something that everybody can agree on is a good thing. It is not a good thing that Russia did attempt to distort, disrupt, however you want to call it, interfere with our election through using social media and accentuating the divisions in our country. And I guess I have to disagree with what Victor Davis Hanson said, which is that I don't think Mueller's reputation has been damaged here, and I don't think the fact that his team was perhaps, filled with a bunch of people who were supposedly Democrats is in hindsight a black mark. If anything, that fortifies the president's position right now, which is like, even this guy who was Inspector Javert couldn't find collusion on him. The dangling piece here is the no exoneration on obstruction, but I think the Democrats have to think really carefully about pursuing that, because that gets into relitigating the whole Comey firing, which is ultimately supposedly the source of the obstruction, and that leads down a very, very deep rabbit hole. And I think, Speaker Pelosi has said we're not going to impeach, and if you're not going to impeach, what's the point of pursuing that obstruction? So that's a tough one for them.
Kimberly, We found out today that the Attorney General found out 3 weeks prior to the report coming out that Mueller was not going to reach a conclusion on obstruction. That surprised both Barr and Rosenstein. We heard Alan Dershowitz and others say they should have, yes or no, come to a conclusion instead of putting things in that report. Your thoughts? We've got the other panel after this to talk about it as well.
Yeah, look, I do think there are some interesting questions about how Mueller handled this. On the one hand, you could say that tossing it to the Attorney General was at least putting that question in the hands of someone with some political accountability. And then obviously one of the knocks against the special counsel is that he's not necessarily political accountable. Nobody elected him. Nobody confirmed him. On the other hand, you could wonder if it was a bit of a wimpy thing to just toss that off to the AG and leave it with him. But on a broader point, look, I think Chuck makes a good, valid one. Legally, from an obstruction perspective, the president has a win here because no one is going to pursue from a position of authority obstruction charges. Now, if Democrats want to make the political case for why that's wrong, they're welcome to. But again, even in light of this news that you just mentioned, one of their complaints, for instance, was that Barr had rushed to judgment on the obstruction question. Well, that's clearly a false narrative because he has been in possession of this information for 3 weeks. Moreover, we found out that he consulted with career officials at the Office of Legal Counsel in making the decision not to pursue obstruction.
Now that we know there's no collusion, President Trump and his legal team are calling it an investigation into the investigators. So what's next for the members of Congress to look into? Joining us now, a member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Mark Meadows, and ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan. And if you want to know why President Trump was able to sustain this fight, it was because of these two gentlemen had a lot to do with that. First off, individually, your reaction to the 4-page conclusion that we all read yesterday. Jim?
Well, I think, remember 4 numbers, 19, 40, 500, and 2,800. 19 lawyers, most of them Clinton Democrat lawyers, 40 FBI agents, 500 search warrants, and 2,800 subpoenas over 22 months. And the findings come back and they say what? No more indictments coming, no sealed indictments, no collusion, no obstruction. This is as strong a statement as you can see. This is good for the president. More importantly, it's good for the country.
Yeah, we're going to roll the full screen in, and it's similar stats of 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, a cost of between $25 and $40 million. Mark, you talked to the president probably as much as anybody on the Hill. How much has this weighed down on him and affected him?
Well, I mean, it's weighed down on him from doing his job. I mean, you've got a president who loves this country, who's committed to this country, and yet each and every day there were lies after lies after lies told about him, you know, and some by in the media, but some by Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, the same people that are going to try to switch the narrative and say, oh, well, this is not an exoneration. I can tell you it's a total vindication of the president, but it's not just for the president. It is indeed for the American people who trusted this president, who voted for him, and now can say to the mainstream media, you know, why have you lied to us for 2 years? It's about time.
Yeah, here is Jerry Nadler yesterday. He didn't miss his opportunity to go to the streets of New York, get heckled, and speak out.
We will ask the Attorney General to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. We will demand the release of the full report. The Attorney General's comments make it clear that Congress must step in to get the truth and provide full transparency to the American people.
So,
Brian,
as predicted.
Brian, you know, Brian, one of the big things, you hear Jerry Nadler there. If he wants to get to the truth, let's bring in Glenn Simpson, who started this with a fake dossier, who actually has claimed the fifth. Let's go ahead and bring in a lot of the individuals who put this false narrative out there. If we really want to get to the truth, let's be about the truth.
Brian, Mark's exactly right. 81 letters Jerry Nadler sent out because this wasn't the bombshell they hoped for. In fact, it was just the opposite, the Mueller report. So they're starting a whole new fishing expedition. 81 letters to 60 different people. But 2 key people he didn't send a letter to. He didn't send one to Glenn Simpson, and he didn't send one to Christopher Steele, the foreigner hired by the Clinton campaign to write the dossier that was the basis for this whole twisted deal.
Before I let you go, I want to bounce something off you a little bit different. The Investor Business Daily does this headline that captured my attention. It says, Obama, Hillary, and Brennan combined to take down Trump. And in it, they have this quote, James Clapper to Anderson Cooper, CNN. If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set up a whole sequence of events that are still unfolding today, including Special Counsel Robert Mueller. President Obama is responsible for that. It was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place. He was trying to credit Obama, but what in retrospect did he do?
Well, we do know, based on certain text messages and actually meetings that took place between the Department of Justice, the intel community, and indeed the White House, that there was an involvement at the highest levels of government. That being said, it requires further investigation to make sure that we do that we do not weaponize the intelligence community, the Department of Justice, or the FBI. And I know Jim and I are committed to getting to the bottom of it.
And I'm going to have one question, try to end on a positive note. Hakeem Jeffries, I'll paraphrase. He says, I am going to search hard to find common grounds to work with the president. Do you believe him, Jim?
Well, let's hope so. It doesn't sound like Mr. Nadler is looking to do that. It doesn't sound like Mr. Schiff is looking to do that. It doesn't sound like Chairman Cummings is looking to do that. So I appreciate what Mr. Jeffries has said, and hopefully we can find some common ground, deal with the crisis on the border, build the border security wall, do some things that need to be done to deal with our debt situation. Right. Let's hope we can.
And by the way, that's what people are saying at home. They're over this Russian thing. Yep. They're talking about prescription drugs. They're talking about health care, and they're talking about immigration. Guys, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
Great to see you today. And the president really earns you a debt of gratitude for standing by him.